This is titled from Emmett Fox, Hallowed Be Thy Name. He does a whole explanation on the Our Father. And so, and that covers, I think, a couple of weeks. But anyway, for today, February 6th, it's Hallowed Be Thy Name. If we trace the derivation of the word hallowed, we will discover a most extraordinarily significant fact. The word hallowed has the same root as holy, whole, wholesome, and heal or healed. So we see that the nature of God is complete and perfect, altogether good. Some very remarkable consequences follow from this fact. We have agreed that an effect must be similar in its nature to its cause. And so, because the nature of God is hallowed, everything that is projected by that cause must be hallowed or perfect too. God cannot cause or send anything but perfect good. God cannot, as people sometimes think, send sickness or trouble or accidents, much less death, for these things are unlike his nature. There's a short scripture from Habakkuk. I may not have said that correctly. How would you say that?
Habakkuk, I would have said.
Habakkuk. In the Old Testament, in chapter 1, verse 13. I'm going to read what's in Emmett Fox, and Brian's going to read the Lamsa version. Thou art of pure eyes, then to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity.
And the way Lamsa translated it, and I'm going to finish the whole thing. Thine eyes are too pure, they cannot behold, they do not, again, thine eyes are too pure, they do not behold evil. And thou canst not look on wicked men. That's what he quoted. Now here's the rest of it. Why dost thou look on presumptuous men and art silent when the wicked devours the righteous man? A real call to action. So today we're lucky enough that Lori Kay is going to be talking. And Lori, tell us the topic.
The topic is making room for God in our daily lives. You said a phrase just now, Brian, and now I can't even recall what it was, but it's about, this talk is really about the journey that we're on and being at the place we are. How do we make God, Godness, I'll often call it, part of our daily lives? So I want to start with a story, a question. I want to finish up with some quotes that will let us sort of cogitate for ourselves, because not everybody's going to have the same answers to anything spiritual. It's all so individual. And then we'll do a little guided visualization or meditation together. So I think in this group, I'm safe in saying that we all agree that God is not the man with the beard in the sky, that God is very present. Tim's like, oh my God. That also that God is even a step beyond omnipresent in terms of the way that we hold it in our consciousness. So I think probably a good while ago, we all came to God is omnipresent, but making that a reality in our consciousness, that is the rest of the journey, I think. How do we feel like we are sitting in the same room with whoever our divine beloved is, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or the self or the formless, whoever it is? How do we feel like we're sitting in that presence and that it is infusing our experience every single day? And is that something that we want? What do we want from God? So to take a step back, I just want to talk about my journey, because I think parts of it are going to be very similar to yours. I was brought up very secular. I was a secular Jewish, from a secular Jewish family. And I thought a lot about, does God exist? I was not sure. Like, I don't know about that. I have no idea. And I was open-minded about things. I was always questioning. And I think questioning is a very potent part of the spiritual journey to make room for God in our lives. Then what happened in my very late 20s was I met a great saint named Amachi. And she's a woman from India who knew from the moment she was born that she's an avatar. Her story is remarkable. What's really remarkable is that the minute I saw her, I knew that at the time I said to myself, she's God. She's God. I suddenly had a total breakthrough in consciousness saying, this is divinity in a human form. So I could no longer doubt that God existed. But now I had a whole host of other questions. Like, if God is really there, then why am I suffering? Doesn't God care? Like, does my mother care more about me than God? Like, my mother would come running if I were hurting, and God doesn't come running. I don't understand that. I don't understand. So I had lots and lots of questions, and a lot of people didn't like that. They were like, you just need to trust your heart. You need to have faith. For my own personal makeup, I wanted answers, and I knew I was going to have to get them my own way. So I meet this woman, and within 24 hours, I could not leave her side. I felt physically, I experienced, this is one other aspect of bringing the divine in. When you feel something divine and you identify it as that, because it can't be anything else, to remember that, to keep that in your consciousness, to keep remembering and bringing it back and deepening your experience with it is very, very critical, I have found. So I felt within 24 hours, like all of the cells in all of the pores in my entire body were open and shot through with light. I felt absolutely stoned on Shakti. Shakti is energy, right? Divine energy. And I felt I was like, she is me, I am her. Wonderful, fabulous, terrific. And then 10 days later, this is in 1988. 10 days later, she left to go back to India. And I was plopped back down into a life without a light bulb, because my internal light bulb had not yet been turned on, really. I hadn't learned how to operate it myself without being in her presence. Now, the second year she came around, I started asking her the questions. And I started by asking, how can I keep you with me? How can I keep you close to me all the time? Even when I'm depressed, even when I'm confused, even when I'm needing answers, even when I don't believe in you, how do I keep you close to me? And she kept, every question I asked her from then for like 5 years on, she only had one answer for me. It was very frustrating. Her answer was, don't worry, Mother is with you. Well, I just got pissed off. It's like, I need something I could actually use. Like, how does that help me when you're not in front of me? How does that help me? I need something that's going to help me feel more stable, that's going to help me feel saner, that's going to help me not miss my own mother who had died 8 years previously. How do I get through this world if I can't find the ongoing sense that there really is someone there for me now that my person, my mother, is not there for me? And she just kept answering, don't worry, Mother is with you. Now, this is very much what Jesus said. Be not afraid. Be not afraid, it turns out, if I'm not incorrect, was mentioned 365 times in the Bible, right? I think, anyway. So, once for each day, that's kind of curious. That's very interesting. Well, 20 years later, and I kept asking questions. I never stopped asking questions, internally and externally. 20 years later, I went to the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living, and I was introduced to Ernest Holmes and Joel S. Goldsmith, and these people who are amazing and very focused, very fierce about declaring that God in me, as me, is me. It is immediate. That thing we want, that love, that compassion, that great blessing is already here. Well, that's frustrating also. How come I can't find it if it's already here? But the fact that I had this breakthrough with God in me, as me, is me, was a journey on that consciousness path. And I think that the combination of questioning, of musing about what I'd learned, daring to make choices, letting it be very experiential, was leading me deeper into saying what is truly real. And I think we all have to do that if we want to be aligned with that thing. It's just so hard to talk about. So what I wanted from God at that point was I wanted to live with the awareness that I'm constantly held, right? And I kept falling out of that. I couldn't sustain that. But about 8 years ago, when I came back home from California, which was kind of in the end, kind of a disastrous experience, but I came home and I was sitting in the room of a person who was putting me up because I'd run completely out of money. I had nowhere to live. And a friend of mine from grade school and high school took me in. And I was sitting on this bed in this little room and doing my favorite thing of beating up on myself. How could you run out of money? How could you do this? How could you be so foolish? You idiot, you horrible person. And I suddenly had another opening in consciousness, which was that all of those horrible words that I was saying to myself actually have a physical impact. Not in some vague way, like someday I'll feel it, but right in those moments, I could feel each phrase pushing out from inside my skin like pointed icicles. It was painful. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? Oh my God. And something came to me from the little bit of Reiki that I had done with people, where what I would do is just go to them, perceive whatever it was that I was hovering my hands over, and tell that thing I was perceiving that I wasn't there to change it. I was there to be with it, to make room for it. So I thought, what if I do that for myself? What if I just go to one of those spots and not try to change it, not push against it, but just be with it in mercy? I thought that sounded pretty good. So I went to that first spot and I was really careful, edging up on it from inside and carefully letting it know that I wasn't there to change it. I was just there to be with it. And as I mentally sat down, it melted like that fast. Boom, just went. I was stunned. I was like, what? So I went to all the different parts, all the different pinpoint places within my body, being very careful to remind myself, you're not here to change them. You're here to be with them. If they have something to tell you, you're going to listen. You're just here to make room. And one by one, they just dissolved. Took about a half an hour. And what happened as a result of that, internal kindness, internal compassion, internal making room for me, was that I spent the following 3 days in bliss. I walked through my days in complete, grounded bliss. There, I was one with the world was one with me, God was part of all of it. It was okay. I could handle whatever came my way because I was centered and able, and there was no fear, and there was no depression, and there was there was just business. Wow, that was intense. So my journey has been, because there's been suffering that has felt overwhelming to me so many times. My journey has been, how do I live God? How do I bring that in? How do I exercise the qualities of God, like compassion and love, discernment, kindness, forgiveness? And I really rebelled against taking one of those and making that a practice, because it felt too much like going to school for me. I would push too hard to excel. So I said, okay, so how am I going to let God in? Well, fortunately, there are many paths to bring the divine in, but the one thing that they have to be, no matter who you are, no matter what path you're on, is they have to impact you. They have to be experiential, and they have to affect you emotionally. And what do you imagine it would feel like if you were sitting in a room with the divine? Your divine, whether that's Jesus or for me, Amachi, or whoever it is, or the formless. What would that be like? I can tell you that for me, it has ranged from bliss to gratitude, to anger, to feelings of unworthiness. At one time in my life, I actually dropped to my knees when she came into the room, because I felt I wasn't worthy to stand in her presence. It is such a powerful thing to bring the divine into our own sense of self, because we have many places to hide. But there are writers, there are wise mystics who have gone before, who do two things for us: make us think and make us love. There are any number of paths, but in the Hindu path, there are two main ones. One is the path of bhakti, which is the path of devotion, and the other one is the path of jnana, which is the path of the mind. So I have both. I adore Amachi, and I'm also always questioning, always looking deeper. So as I read some things to you, I just want to put an idea in your head. The question is, what do you want from God? I mean, there's a list, like I made a list, and I'm going to have to say, even before I read them to you, that I want them all. But the one that I think takes care of all of them is putting the alignment with the divine first. So the big question is, how do we do that? Now, here's my list. Do we want God to make our dreams come true? Do we want God to rescue us sometimes? Do we want God to make us better than we are? Do we want God to save us from suffering? Do we want God to heal our wounds? Or do we want to put the being of that energy that is so strong that everything aligns to it like a magnet? Everything good comes into alignment. Do we want that? And if we do want that, how do we do that? So here are some quotes for you to take in. One of the people I'm going to read to you, Joel Goldsmith, he has a number of amazing books that were put out. One is called Practicing the Presence. I don't know if you've read. Have any of you read Joel Goldsmith before? He's intense, right? Like, he takes no prisoners. He goes, he's like, there are no two powers. There's not God and illness. There's only God that's real. Illness isn't real. Like, he's just intense. So that's where he's coming from. I'm also going to read to you from Kabir. who's a 15th century mystic poet from India, and Rumi, who's a 13th century poet from Afghanistan. So from practicing the presence, just take this in as a curiosity to see if any of it feels right to you. God is, of that you may be sure. This is only true in your experience, however, in the degree in which you contemplate, meditate, and keep your mind stayed on God, living, moving, and having your being in the conscious realization that God will never leave you nor forsake you. God's grace is your sufficiency, but this is only made practical in your life by your contemplation of that grace. Only in the degree that you live consciously in the realization of God and let this realization of God dwell in you does it become true that you do not live alone, that the place whereon you stand is holy ground. For God is with you and he will never leave you nor forsake you. I just want to say about that real quickly that one part of the sentence, the place whereon you stand is holy ground. Think about that literally. Can you start to think about yourself in those terms? I am holy. Not from an ego place. Can you start to think about it though and question it? And that's powerful stuff to me. Okay. Richard Rohr says two things. I find the first one really interesting. First one he says is simply, religion is one of the safest places to hide from God. And I think that's not because of being anti-religion or anything. It's because once you put rules around the divine, you're that much further from the divine. The second thing I have from him is the journey to happiness involves finding the courage to go down into ourselves and take responsibility for what's there, all of it. When I read that, I'm aware that the first thing I hear in my head when I hear take responsibility for what's there, all of it, I hear, oh, you mean all that crap that's down. And then I remember, wait a second, that's not it. The thing that really takes courage is to see our beauty and to live that every day. So here are some poems from, let's see, this is Kabir. And in Kabir's poems, if you haven't read them before, he always ends up with a doublet or a quatrain or whatever it is, where he goes, Kabir says. So that'll be at the end of this, right? So this one's called, Are You Looking for Me? My shoulder is against yours. You will not find me in the stupas, not in Indian shrine rooms, nor in synagogues, nor in cathedrals, not in masses, nor kirtans, not in legs winding around your own neck, not in eating nothing but vegetables. When you really look for me, you will see me instantly. You will find me in the tiniest house of time. Kabir says, student, tell me, what is God? He is the breath inside the breath. Here is one from Rumi. It's called Here I Am. All night, a man called Allah until his lips were bleeding. Then the devil said, hey, Mr. Gullible, how come you've been calling all night and never once heard Allah say, here I am? You call out so earnestly, and in reply, what? I'll tell you what, nothing. The man suddenly felt empty and abandoned. Depressed, he threw himself on the ground and fell into a deep sleep. In a dream, he met Abraham, who asked, why are you regretting praising Allah? The man said, I called and called, but Allah never replied, here I am. Abraham explained, Allah has said, your calling my name is my reply. Your longing for me is my message to you. All your attempts to reach me are in reality my attempts to reach you. Your fear and love are a noose to catch me. In the silence surrounding every call of Allah waits 1,000 replies of here I am. And the last thing I want to read to you, I could read to you from these guys forever, but is from Kabir. If we solve enough problems and seek to understand the truth, it's not from Kabir, I'm sorry. It's from Joel Goldstein, whatever he is. If we solve enough problems and seek to understand the truth behind issues and situations, day in and day out, for 1, 2, 3, or more years, we shall have all the answers available for instant use. Years and years of contemplating God and the things of God, meditating and communing with God will have eliminated the necessity for taking thought for the things of this world. When a question arises, the right answer is immediately revealed. The listening attitude, the expectant attitude, developed through meditation, creates a kind of vacuum into which God rushes with those things of which we have need, whether it be wisdom, power, grace, or whatever may be necessary. So I'm just going to invite us to collectively come together to let Godness, to let goodness, to let however you experience this, to fall into our consciousness together. So I invite you to close your eyes and join me in coming inside to yourself. Taking a breath, sighing it out, letting all these thoughts go. And I want to suggest to you that you find yourself, if you are of a visualizing type, find yourself in a beautiful space. Someplace you find beautiful and safe and relaxing. If you are not of a visualizing type, simply stay with your breath and just feel how it does the work for you. Feel out into this moment with all of these beautiful souls, all of us holding each other, all of us together and not alone. Feel the energy, feel into the energy. Let yourself discover instead of already know. Let yourself receive simply because we're all doing it. We're all asking. We're all allowing. We're all making room for God. God is limitless. Anything that comes to you, sound, idea, inspiration, thought, color, is perfect. It is perfect. It is meant for you. So let yourself be with this moment as I was with those painful, physically painful thoughts. Let yourself simply sit in mercy and receptivity, and we'll be in silence for a little while and receive whatever it is that you're meant to receive. It could be the beauty of this communing with one another. It could be a message. It could be anything. God is limitless. We just receive. Receiving, not reaching out, just receiving. The beauty of you. And as we begin to come back, before you open your eyes, allow yourself to welcome in that being or that energy that you recognize as the one that loves you so much and that you love so much. You may open your eyes when you're ready.
Thank you for helping us create this community of like-minded souls to enjoy each other, to find strength in each other. Thank you for allowing us to know the love that you have for us and to experience it and to see your workings in our lives as we seek to serve you, be worthy, and to bring your love to this earth. Help us to care for your creation ever better, and help us to grow ever closer to you. Amen.